This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
Got some really big games coming up this weekend across the NFL, and big games mean big player prop opportunities over at FanDuel Sportsbook as well. So a lot to dissect across Week 12. We're going to have Aidan Cotter on of FanDuel Research breaking down his thoughts on top props this weekend. We'll talk some yardage props, some touchdown picks. Really want to buy low on some superstars who have been underwhelming of late to get you ready for Week 12 in the NFL. This is Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I am a managing editor of FanDuel Research, joined here as mentioned by Aidan Cotter. You can find him on Twitter at AidanCotterFD. He is also on Blue Sky at Aidan Cotter. You can find his work over at FanDuel Research, where he is a writer for us. Aidan, on to week number 12. Thanksgiving is on the horizon. How you doing today?
Pretty good, Jim. I'm kind of surprised you asked me to come back on. The last time I was on, my Dayton Flyers were taking on your Northwestern Wildcats the next day in basketball, and my Flyers came out ahead, but I'm happy that you've gotten over that and decided to have me back on.
You know, Aidan, when you are a Northwestern fan, you are very used to disappointment. So I feel like I can't be hurt anymore. And I feel like that's a very freeing feeling. And I'd recommend it, frankly. You know, you lose all hope and life will be a lot better.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we have a little bit more hope this week for some player props here.
I've got on the NFL side of things where I'm not tied, like a group of Jets fan, I'm not really tied to a team right now. I have all the hope in the world that the last night's snow game that provided me with like a jolt of life. So we are ready to cook here today and break down some player props for week 12. As mentioned, we're going to talk about some superstars who have had starts of the year and identify, is now the right time to buy low, or should we hold off on doing so until they show us a bit more there? We'll talk some yardage props and touchdown picks and a same game parlay Aidan likes for week 12 as well. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. You can find us there. Just search for Covering the Spread. Hit subscribe. And if you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating and review as well. Of course, these shows are live on the brand new YouTube page as well. Next week, 5 shows in 3 days. We'll be live typical time on Monday for the Monday Night Football preview, 9:30 a.m. Eastern. And then we'll be live 10 a.m. on Tuesday and Wednesday, but also in the afternoon. I believe it'll be 3 p.m. Tuesday, 2 p.m. Wednesday for the 2 DFS shows. So I'll let you know. As I said, I'll tweet it out, put it on. I'll skeet it out, I guess, on Blue Sky as well. This full schedule for next week for the shows here. But again, just subscribe to the YouTube page, turn on notifications there as well to get notified as we go live through what should be a very fun week next week. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, an affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC. First online real money wager, only $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/Chatham, Connecticut. Visit MD Gambling Help.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Now, Aidan, we'll dive into the player props here in a second, but I want to let you know that the ball knowers are on YouTube because WCL Lakers did notice you had a Tyler Adams jersey back there. I had to ask you who that was. So WCL Lakers confirmed ball knower. I am playing catch up. But Tyler Adams, no Flacco this time?
Yeah,
couldn't get Flacco. A Dunze out there? I need a Dunze in DFS. Where's the Dunze jersey?
I know. I got to save that for Sunday. I didn't wear it this last week, and
the
Bears offense actually looked pretty good, but I don't know if that has more to do with Shane Waldron or me not wearing the jersey on Sunday, but
hopefully.
Well,
if you didn't wear it last week and you got 10 targets, I'm going to have to ask you to keep that one in the closet just this week for me, for my bags. Please, Aidan, help us out here. Let's take a look here at the props across week 12 in the NFL. And I want to kick things off by talking about a couple of underperforming superstars thus far. That is on the 49ers team, because both Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey have looked odd so far, like from a tape perspective. They've looked a little bit weird. And now we got this Brock Purdy shoulder thing going on as well at the Niners. He was limited in practice again on Thursday. There were some weird reports about how he pulled himself out of practice. So don't really know what's going on there. We have seen some movement towards the Packers as a result of those reports. So I wanted to ask you about McCaffrey and Deebo. Obviously, props aren't really up right now for them because we're kind of waiting to see the status of Purdy first. But overall, are you looking to buy low on those two guys specifically? Well, let's assume Purdy's healthy for this one. Or do you think you kind of want to hold off? You've seen some concerning things with them. What's your read on those two guys specifically right now?
Definitely CMC. I'm looking to buy low on a little bit. I mean, like you said, he has looked a little rusty, but the 49ers wasted no time giving him his full workload again. I mean, he's averaged 28 adjusted opportunities, which is carries plus 2x targets. He's averaged 28 over the last 2 games. He's played nearly 91% of the snaps. So CMC, I'm not as worried about, especially with this kind of whatever is going on with Brock Purdy. I definitely would anticipate them to lean on him even more in the next few weeks. So CMC, I think, like you said, we need to wait for those lines to come out. But I think rushing, receiving, just rushing, I think are definitely both in play this week. Deebo's a little trickier for me. He's always been kind of a streakier player, and it's not from lack of opportunity because they get him involved in a multitude of ways. They just always seem to have a lot of weapons, and he's never been the primary target. I mean, even with Brandon Ayuk out for the season, we've seen Juwan Jennings just get nearly a 35% target share over the last 2 games with CMC back, and Deebo's right around there at 20%. But I don't know. I think I'm a little more worried about Deebo than CMC. Especially you see they have the rookie Ricky Pearsall coming up the last few games. I mean, George Kittle's obviously still involved, assuming he's all good to go for Sunday. So I think CMC, I'm not as worried about. Deebo, definitely some pause. He's more of I want to wait and see it first before I buy all the way back in. But CMC, it's all systems go. I'm not worried about him at all.
I agree with you there. And the Deebo one, I've been trying to buy low on Deebo most of this year so far because I keep thinking back to all the touchdowns, the long plays he had called back. I'm okay, he looks fine. But he just keeps getting hurt. And he was not on the injury report last week at all. He practiced in full all 3 days, not listed at all, and then still underperformed. Honestly, it was his worst game last week. So that was pretty concerning for me. I think that was the one where I was okay, maybe I do need to take a step back here and wait on Deebo, potentially buy back in later. So I think we're on the same page there with McCaffrey and Samuel. As far as the Purdy stuff goes, there's been some buyback on the Niners a bit this morning. The +3 was -110 earlier, now +1 or -114. So hopefully some good news on Purdy on the horizon. We'll see how that plays out throughout the day for today. I want to talk to you about one other thing here, Aidan, and that's that we have a lot of large spreads on the board this week. The Commanders traded by 10.5 against the Cowboys. We've got a couple of 7.5 point spreads. Of course, the Chiefs are big favorites as well. I wanted to ask you how that impacts your prop betting process. How do you factor in a spread when trying to decide how you want to view the player props within that game?
Yeah, so this is something that you and Brandon talk about a lot in DFS is how much pushback are we going to get from the opposing side, right? And this is a bad example, but the Lions last week were big favorites, and it didn't matter. But I was kind of off the Lions a little bit more from an upside perspective because, okay, if they take a 21-point lead in the second quarter, how much are they going to continue to throw it? And obviously last week they continued to air it out and let Goff get back into the groove. But I think in general for props, it doesn't impact things as much just because we're not looking for that high end outcome, right? We're just looking for them to hit their median projection.
Right.
I think especially this week, looking at the Chiefs, for example, and we'll talk a little bit more about them later, but the Chiefs are I think second in the league in pass rate over expectation. So they're throwing kind of regardless of game script. So I think it's a situation where we have to look more into the specific teams where Kansas City might be okay throwing even if they're up a few touchdowns on the Panthers versus okay, if the Ravens get up big, we know they're just going
Right.
to run the ball with Derrick Henry 100 times. So it's really a team by team basis. But I think in general, if we're shooting for like alt props or like looking for these high range outcomes, that's where you're looking for those tighter spreads. But in general, it doesn't impact things too much. But still, I'm more concerned about like totals and then just general game environment.
Yeah, it's about volume at that point. You want them pushing for all 4 quarters. Like if you want a DeAndre Hopkins alternate catch prop, you're looking at more of a neutral script there. So I think it's kind of like you said, it's the alt markets where it impacts things more. And I do want that shootout if I'm going to shoot for a 100 plus yards receiving, something like that for a player. I want to make sure I've got a path to getting volume in all 4 quarters to bail me out in case we don't get there ahead of time as well. So I agree with you that it doesn't impact the baseline stuff as much, but definitely for alt numbers, it does play a pretty key role. Okay, Aidan, let's talk some player props, specific props for this week. Let's begin things on the yardage side. Any yardage props you're targeting for week 12 at FanDuel Sportsbook?
Yeah, so let's go right back to that Chiefs game I was just talking about. Chiefs-Panthers. This is a spot where I like Travis Kelce to go over 56.5 receiving yards. So last week was rough for Kelce. I mean, the Bills really did a good job on him. They really keyed it on him. I think they only held him to under 20 yards receiving. But if we look at his numbers overall since Rashee Rice went down in week 4, he's looked just like the Kelce of old. I mean, across his last 7 games, he's averaging nearly 8 receptions and 63 yards a game, nearly double-digit targets every single game. And then he's actually been more effective since they traded for DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins hasn't exactly filled that Rashee Rice role. He's definitely helped take away some pressure off of Kelce, but we're still seeing him put up over 65 yards per game and leading the team with a 30% target share since they acquired Hopkins. And in this specific matchup, I mean, Carolina, their defense is really bad. They're 31st in schedule adjusted pass defense, according to Number Fire's metrics, and they've given up the 3rd most yards per route run to opposing tight ends. So in general, like this is a spot where Kelce should smash. And again, like we just talked about, the biggest concern is like the Chiefs are big favorites and they get up early and they don't need to use Kelce as much. But for one, the Chiefs just seem to play down to the level of competition. They've only won by double digits twice this year. And one of them against the Niners, which I guess the Niners just aren't the same. But in the other game against the Saints, Kelce still had a really big game. And like I said, the Chiefs are 2nd in pass rate over expectation. They're about league average in raw pass rate. And so I think coming off of a down game against a really bad defense, I definitely am anticipating them to pepper Kelce and try to get him back on track here.
Yeah, and that match with the Bills, like the Bills know Kelce well. Those 2 teams play, it seems like twice a year at this point, despite not being a divisional matchup. So they know Kelce well. The Panthers have not seen this Chiefs team in a while. Obviously, it's been 4 years since they last faced them. So it's a bit more of a unique matchup, and you can see familiarity play a key role. So I think that does help Kelce here for sure as well. And as you mentioned, just massive volume for him since the Rashee Rice injury. Kelce 56.5 over his -114 for him there. Which other yardage props stick out to you this week, Aidan?
Yeah, so in this Bucs Giants game, I'm looking at Mike Evans over 54.5 receiving yards.
He's back, baby.
He is back. Yeah, so this is Mike Evans' first game since injuring his hamstring in week 7. And like generally hamstrings are like the scariest injury for me because of the risk of re-injury in game, especially Mike Evans. This is not the first hamstring injury he's dealt with in his career, but he's practicing full this week. And even going back to when he first got injured, there was some initial debate on like, is he even going to hit IR? Like, is he just going to miss 2 or 3 weeks? And he ended up missing the full 4 games, but I'm going into this game under the assumption that he's like close to 100%. But I don't necessarily think that's a shared assumption, just given how short this line is. So if we exclude the game that Evans got injured in, where he didn't play very much, he was only averaging 52 yards per game over the first 6 games and only getting like 4 receptions. But he still saw 44% of Tampa's air yards, which is what we were really looking for in terms of yardage props. And that came alongside Chris Godwin, who was having an incredible year and was leading the team in target rate. Well, Godwin's no longer in the picture, so I would not be surprised if he flirts with close to a 30% target share the rest of the season. I mean, we've seen Baker pepper Cade Otton over the last 4 games, and I like Cade Otton a lot.
Yeah.
But like, there's levels to this, man. Like, Mike Evans is a Hall of Fame wide receiver, and Cade Otton's a good player, but I would anticipate a lot of those looks going his way. And like, we know how much of a big play machine he is. So this is like only being 54.5. He can get that in like 3 receptions. And I would anticipate him to get a lot more work than that. But I think we have, because of his big playability, we have a little bit of assurance just in case he doesn't get that volume right away. But I mean, this matchup is just, it's really good. I like it a lot. The Giants are 11th in pass defense according to NumberFire, but they haven't been a bad matchup for wide receivers. They're middle of the pack in yards per route run allowed to the position, and they've given up the 4th highest catch rate over expectation according to Next Gen Stats. Evans will likely see a lot of Deonte Banks, who has shadowed a lot of opposing teams as top wide receivers. And he's someone who's just like, he's not a bad player, but he is not the type of cornerback where we need to shy away from in those one-on-one matchups. I mean, we've seen him consistently get torched by opposing teams number ones. And I think the matchup alone is enough for me to get this at 54.5. But then, of course, there's narratives at play here too. And I think that might be the most important thing. Evan needs to average 95 yards a game over his last 6 games to hit that 1,000-yard mark for his 11th straight season. And like, I'm not sure he gets there, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he flirts with it, especially with Godwin done for the year and Baker playing really well. I definitely don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. So taking that into account, with Godwin being out and with Evans looking close to 100%, practicing in full, I really like the spot. And I think this is the main prop where I'm looking to ladder it this weekend. So looking at some of those alt lines in case one of those big plays hits, or in case Baker continues to play really well and he does get that volume that Godwin was seeing before. So I believe 80 plus is plus 220. That would probably be my preferred route to go. 100 plus is plus 420, and he hasn't hit 100 yards in a game this year, but in the only game where he saw more than 7 targets in a game, he did go for 94. So yeah, I'm assuming he is going to get a lot of these targets with Godwin out. And given the matchup and how well Baker's played, I think this is a really nice spot to buy low on him, because I don't think the public perception is like, it's more up in the air about Mike Evans going into this week.
Well, I think there are a lot of key things at play here. The first one being some coach speak, because Liam Cohen, their offensive coordinator, was talking yesterday, and he said, like, hey, we're not going to get these vertical routes from Mike Evans because we want to ease him back in. But like, he was full in practice, like you said, Thursday. He said, yeah, I probably could have pushed a play in week 10 if I had wanted to. And that was before their bye week. So he could have pushed a play in week 10 if he wanted to. They had their bye, and now he's gotten a full practice Thursday. I'm pretty sure Liam Cohen is lying to us. So that's kind of my assumption here with Mike Evans. And also Tristan Wirfs, who is a very impactful player for them at tackle. Limited practice for him both Wednesday and Thursday. I was kind of surprised by that. I thought he might sit this week, but that leads me to think that there's a possibility at least that Wirfs does go. If we get Wirfs and Evans, the Bucs offense can go nuclear here once again. I laid the 5.5 with them personally on the spread in this game. And I think that buying the Bucs in general does make a lot of sense. Aidan mentioned the 80 plus, that's now plus 230. 100 plus is plus 430. The baseline prop 53.5, that is minus 114. Let's talk some touchdown props, Aidan. When you look at the touchdown markets of FanDuel Sportsbook, where are you seeing value for this week?
Yeah, I can't say I'm in love with the touchdown market this week. And I think that's kind of to be expected because we have 6 teams on bye.
Right.
And so with fewer games to choose from, I'm more focused on specific offenses than like specific matchups this week. And there is not an offense that I trust more right now than the Detroit Lions. I mean, they have the second best offense in football, according to NumberFire, and they have the highest implied total for this week. I mean, we've seen them clear 50 points twice in the last 4 weeks. And last week, 5 different Lions got into the end zone. So this is a spot where like, I just want a piece of this offense. And last week, Sam Laporta missed out on the fun because of a shoulder injury, but his backup Brock Wright did score in his place, and Laporta has practiced in full this week, so I am assuming he is good to go. And when you look at his touchdown score odds, plus 200, that is definitely something that I can get behind. I mean, he hasn't been the same touchdown machine that he was last year, where he was just running very hot and kind of outperforming his expectation, especially with the rise of Jameson Williams turning into a legit NFL player. I mean, in games, both of them have played. Laporta only has a 12% target share, and he's only scored twice. So that's not great. But he's also seen a 30% end zone target rate in those games, and he's cleared a 70% route participation. So it's not like he's totally uninvolved, and he's out on the field running a lot of routes when they are passing. And this matchup is so strong, and their implied total is so high that this is where I really want to buy into Laporta versus some of their other skill position players who I think do have good shots to get in the end zone, but it's really hard to lay the minus 200 with Jahmyr Gibbs,
Right.
David Montgomery. I mean, the Colts have been better on defense of late, but I still don't expect the Lions to have a whole lot of issue here against such a zone-heavy team. They're still just 20th in adjusted pass defense, and they've actually been much better against the run since they've gotten DeForest Buckner back. But I think that only plays into the potential for Detroit to air it out a little bit more. And the Colts have been pretty friendly to tight ends. They've allowed the 4th most touchdowns of the position, the 5th highest catch rate, and an above-average target rate. So I think all of those things together with how well the Lions offense is playing, it's more of just like, I want to buy into this offense where I can. And I feel like Sam Laporta and Jameson Williams are the best value to get there, just given their numbers.
Yeah, Laporta right now 2-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook. Williams plus 240 to score right now as well. You mentioned the Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery numbers. Montgomery minus 170 to score. Jahmyr Gibbs minus 145. Amon-Ra St. Brown minus 130 to score for the 30th consecutive game, because that's just what he does at this point. Laporta again plus 200 to score. This one, Laporta in that game, he got hurt. 6 total targets in that game. 3 of those were down. 3 or 4 were downfield. Like a pretty good role for him there before the injury. So I was pretty bummed to see him get hurt, because I have him in Dynasty, generally like him, but I think that we could see a surge back for Sam Laporta this week. Okay, so we're on the Mike Evans receiving yardage prop, Travis Kelce receiving yards as well, and then buying into Sam Laporta touchdown 2-1. To close things up, Aidan, what is your favorite same game parlay across week 12 at FanDuel Sportsbook?
So I think one of the sneaky, most fun games this week is Patriots Dolphins.
It better be. I took the over, so I need to be sneaky fun.
So that is how we're going to start this out, is we're going to start with the over 46.5. And I know you had mentioned that you got it at 45.5, but I still think there's a chance we get a decent amount of points here. We know the Dolphins have an awesome offense, but I'm not sure like people really understand how good they've been since Tua's come back. And if we look at their numbers since his return in 4 games, Miami's 3rd in EPA per play. I mean, they've hit near 30 points every single game. They seem to finally be clicking, especially through the air. And so I think they won't have much trouble scoring against a pretty lackluster Patriots defense. But I also think the Patriots can give Miami a little bit of a pushback here. Yeah. In their 5 full games with Drake May, they've averaged 19 points a game, which isn't great, but they've also faced 4 of the 5 teams they've played were in the top half of the league in adjusted defense. And the Dolphins are like right around 12th in that metric. But if you look at how fast the Patriots have been playing under May, they're 6th in our colleague Brandon Gadula's adjusted pace metric in those games. And so I think that really bodes well for more of a back and forth game, in contrast to the first time they played when Jacoby Brissett was up against, I believe it was Tyler Huntley in that one. But I am still expecting Miami to control this one. I mean, they're favored by a touchdown. They are definitely the better team here. So I'm approaching this game from the viewpoint that the Dolphins are going to be able to put up points and get up early, but I do think the Patriots are going to be able to get their own points on the board. And so under that assumption, I'm thinking, okay, the Dolphins are going to be in a positive game script. I think this is a nice spot for Devon Achane. So we're looking at him, Devon Achane, to go over 66.5 rushing yards. So this is a line Achane has cleared twice in 4 games since Tua's returned, but he's averaging nearly 13 carries and 68 yards per game over that stretch. And while the Pats are definitely a good matchup for him personally, even if Miami doesn't go super run heavy, New England's only 18th against the run, according to Number Fire, and they're 20th in rushing yards allowed per game. When you look at the first time these teams matched up, Achane got hurt super early in the game, but we saw both Jalen Wright and Raheem Mostert crack 80 yards in his place coming in. I think Achane has more juice than both of those guys. And with Tua back, you would assume that their rushing efficiency would be a little bit better. And so I think this is a nice spot for him to continue to play well on the ground and take advantage of a potential positive game script here. And so building off of that, like if we're assuming the Patriots are going to get, or the Dolphins are going to get up and the Patriots are going to have to throw to get back into the game, this is a spot where I think I want to target Hunter Henry over 4.5 receptions as more of like a volume play to take advantage of this projected negative game script. Henry has been Drake May's top target with a team leading 21% target share in his 5 full games. And he's run a route on nearly 3/4 of May's dropbacks, which is 2nd on the team. He's averaging 5 receptions and 7 targets during that stretch. And he has cleared this line in 3 of 5 games with May full. And the Dolphins are about the best matchup you can get for tight ends. They're really good against wide receivers and have given up the highest target rate to opposing tight ends. I mean, we just saw Brock Bowers go for 13 receptions on 16 targets. And like Hunter Henry is not Brock Bowers, but the matchup is great. He's getting peppered with targets. And we have seen him put up these like high reception games this year when New England is forced to throw. And I think this is a game where they're going to have to lean on the air a little bit more. And we've seen May trust Henry. And so I think from a volume play, I'm not against his yards either, but just assuming that the Patriots are going to have to throw a lot, I think over 4.5 receptions is a nice way to round this one out.
Yeah, so that's regular like same game parlay. It's over 46.5. Devon Achane over 66.5 rushing yards, and then the Hunter Henry over 4.5 receptions. That's plus 447 at FanDuel Sportsbook. And if you look at like what my numbers have for this game, I think I've got the total like 47.5 or so, somewhere around there. So still some value in the over, like you said, because 47 is a key number. And I have the Dolphins there by a bit more than 7. I have not taken that personally because I think that Drake May is quite good and quite fun. I don't really want to root against him at the moment, like maybe down the line, but like for right now, I kind of don't want to. But that does imply that there are increased odds the Dolphins play from ahead here. So at least my numbers agree with like the overall setup of this one and agree with like the overall assumptions. And if those assumptions do hit, I think that both the Achane and the Henry props would benefit for sure in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, Drake May's been really fun. He's been good. And I think this is like a really this has sneaky shootout potential. I like this game a lot in DFS. And Drake May's the kind of guy, like you want to buy into these like fun young quarterbacks. And this is a good way to get into that.
It definitely is. And betting is supposed to be fun. And I think that we can get that here with this prop as well. Okay, so again, that's a 3-leg same game parlay, over 46.5 points, Devon Achane, 66.5 rushing yards, and Hunter Henry over 4.5 receptions, plus 447 at FanDuel Sportsbook. That is all that we have here for today and this week on Covering the Spread. Again, a big week for us. Next week, here on the feed already for this week, got our NFL Best Bets with Megan Payton. We have our DFS show, Brandon Gadula on the YouTube side of things, and college football week 13 with Riley Thomas. Those are on the YouTube page right now. Go subscribe there. Leave us a thumbs up if you like what you hear. Make sure you turn on notifications there and find all the podcasts on the Covering the Spread podcast feed. Aidan, appreciate the time as always. Good luck to you with your recommendations for week number 12. I'll talk to you once again in the very near future.
Yep. Thanks for having me on, Jim. Appreciate it.
You can find Aidan on X at AidanCotterFD. Find him on Blue Sky at Aidan Cotter. I am on Blue Sky and Twitter at JimSannes. You can also find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work on the video side of things. Thank you, Justin, as always. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. Have a fantastic weekend and good luck to you with your bets. We'll talk to you once again next week for a jam-packed week and Thanksgiving. This has been Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast.